Tonight on First at 9, this Thursday, the 30th of May 2024. Significant journey ahead. Current progress is not enough. Sri Lanka must plan to avoid external loans by 2035, says the President. Opposition leader continues to question the full privatisation of SOEs. On schedule. Sri Lanka confident of securing the third tranche of the IMF, says State Minister for Finance, as he assures the safety of debt restructuring process despite upcoming elections.
Comment I can give is we are very hopeful and confident that we will reach a resolution soon.
Human rights. Despite international allegations, Sri Lanka will continue to uplift the rights of citizens, assures Foreign Minister Ali Sabri.
What we are trying to do is, and we should do, is to create that conducive environment within Sri Lanka so that nobody can go out and complain.
Target achieved. Investment agency to sign agreements with India's Adani Group for wind power plant projects next week, reveals State Minister for Investment Promotion.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Well, a very warm welcome. You're joining us once again on First at 9 with the very latest from across Sri Lanka and in the globe. We have a number of developments today as well, taking centre stage, elections and Sri Lanka's economic revival. Highlighting the country's economic recovery, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says a significant journey lies ahead, although Sri Lanka is beginning to regain some stability. Addressing a gathering in Colombo, the head of state noted government has been able to defer foreign debt payments until 2027 in a move to ensure financial stability. The President also spoke of optimistic plans to reach a point where loans are not taken from overseas by year 2035.
A ceremony was held at the Bandaranaike Memorial International Conference Hall in Colombo yesterday to commemorate the 60th anniversary of Deshabandhu Leslie Devendra's career. The event was graced by President Ranil Wickremesinghe and saw the attendance of several other political representatives, including opposition leader Sajith Premadasa and the Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abewardena.
ජාතික අවශ්‍යතාවය සඳහා ධනාත්මක එකතුවක් ඇති නොකරන ආයතනවලට
Singapore-based Temasek and Khazanah National in Malaysia are such public-private joint projects. Similarly, we can initiate our own projects. Modern solutions are required to address prejudice against labour when transforming loss-making institutions to profit-making institutions.
ඒ අගතිගාමී තත්ත්වයන් මගහරවා ගන්න නව සැලසුම් නව විසඳුම් අලුත් උත්තරයකට ප්‍රවේශ වන්නට.
1964 සටන් පාට
Approaches and plans implemented in 1964 are no longer applicable in our current context. Therefore, it is pivotal that we acknowledge this reality and prepare for the future. Currently, our country is emerging from a challenging period. Our economy collapsed. However, while observing how our people celebrate events like the Sinhala New Year and the Vesak festival, it is evident that the country is gradually returning to normalcy. However, I am not pleased with this progress. We are merely beginning to recover and progress. There is still a considerable distance to cover, and it is crucial to keep this in mind. We have made a decision to defer debt payments until 2027. However, interest payments should be made during the time. Similarly, settling of loans were extended until 2042. We will reach a final decision following extensive deliberations in this regard. Our aim is to transform the economy to an export-oriented one. However, this transformation may take some time. By 2035, we should get to the point where loans are not borrowed from overseas.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
ජීවිතේ හැම තැනකදීම ස්මාර්ට් වෙන්න පොලිය විතරක් ගෙවාගෙන යන්න CDB Smart Draft.
State Minister of Finance Shahan Semasinghe rejects any suggestion that the presidential election could interfere in the debt restructuring process as a baseless claim by an opposition intended to erode public confidence in the government. The Finance State Minister assured that government is confident of securing the third tranche of the International Monetary Fund's extended fund facility by June. He added that memoranda of understanding with Sri Lanka's bilateral creditors will be inked soon, but refused to comment on the exact timeline of the process.
Are we close to signing MOUs for bilateral debt, and also will there be a second round of face-to-face talks with the bondholders?
Agreement in principles were reached. The OCC, co-chaired by India, Japan and France, and then China also reached an agreement, the Chinese Exim Bank. So we are very optimistic that we'll be able to convert the agreement in principle to MOUs very soon. We have to open the second round of negotiations with regards to ISP. We are hopeful and optimistic that we should reach an agreement. The bondholders are also eagerly waiting to see a resolution. So I think there will be a resolution soon, but I cannot comment anything on the timelines, both on converting the agreement in principle to a MOU with the bilateral creditors, as well as reaching an agreement with ISP holders. The only comment I can give is we are very hopeful and confident that we will reach a resolution soon.
එළඹෙන ජනාධිපතිවරණය නිසා ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කර ක්‍රියාවලියට මොකක් හරි බාධාවක් වෙනවද?
ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කරන ක්‍රියාව
In Sri Lanka, there are political camps that cannot bear to see the debt restructuring process succeeding. They are interfering with this process. They opposed the economic transformation bill in parliament. Now they are trying to convince the people that the debt restructuring process will not be completed. The reason we introduced the economic transformation bill is to enact legislation that will ensure that these economic targets will be achieved. There is no need to harbour any doubts about the debt restructuring process. However, it is not as simple as the opposition claims it to be. They are trying to convince the public that we will not be able to unlock the third tranche of the IMF funds by June. However, the government is confident of completing foreign debt restructuring within the predicted timeframe, and we are also engaged in discussions with international sovereign bondholders. Therefore, we are confident of securing the third IMF tranche in June. We also believe that the third review by the IMF will be even more satisfactory than the first two.
Foreign Affairs Minister Ali Sabri says Western countries have shown their double standards by turning a blind eye to the crisis in Gaza, and that serious amendments must be made to international laws on how the United Nations functions in order to protect international democracy. Joining at Hyde Park with me earlier a short while ago, the minister said that Sri Lanka is of the view that the Israeli-Palestine war must come to an end immediately, and both countries must exist as per the borders announced back in 1965. Commenting on the progress of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Sri Lanka, the foreign minister said Sri Lanka is continuing to work to uplift rights of citizens and called for support of the Tamil diaspora abroad. Also mentioning the government's efforts in resolving issues related to ex-servicemen being sent to Russia to fight in the Ukraine-Russia war, Minister Sabri said senior career diplomat PM Amza will be sent to Russia to tackle the issue more efficiently. I'd like to go to the Middle East, the crisis there. Countries like Sri Lanka, can we keep our eyes open to such atrocities being committed?
Sri Lanka also prosecuted the war against one of the worst terrorist organizations in the world. We were fighting an enemy, but not against our people. We look after our people. Those who want us to be punished 15 years after that are turning a blind eye towards, which is right now taking place in Israel. The Western world is being exposed. Their double standard are there to see. There is one standard, ICC orders against President Putin, but when they order against Netanyahu, a total different interpretation is given. They have been threatened with sanctions, and these are in the meantime, they are talking about peace. So therefore, I think it is time that there should be serious amendment to the international order as to how United Nations functions, as to how General Assembly functions, as to how the Security Council functions. So one or two nations cannot suppress the entire will of the world. 143 countries in the world have voted to recognize Palestine. But one country go into the Security Council and use its so-called veto power and scuttle the whole thing. That's not democracy. I think the best way, both the Israelis and the Palestinians must live side by side on the basis of 1967 borders.
Sri Lanka is held accountable, and Sri Lanka is brought before the UNHRC as well on questions of accountability and crimes against humanity as described by the Western world. How does Sri Lanka look to engage in these and also seek lasting reconciliation?
As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, irrespective of what West say or not, we will continue to work towards uplifting of our people's human rights. That's how we see it. We don't see it as a Tamil, Sinhalese, Muslims. We see it as Sri Lankan. And our human right has to be enhanced, and there has to be accountability if any shortcomings have been committed in the past. That is why our institutions such as Office of Missing Persons, Office of Reparation are working around the clock to find solution to this. I understand that 6,700 people who have complained of their loved ones being missing during the decade of 2000 to 2009 have already gone before the Office of Missing Persons. We are working on that. In the meantime, we will roll out Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So those who have affected could go before and ask for redress. What we are trying to do is, and we should do, is to create that conducive environment within Sri Lanka so that nobody can go out and complain. We will also ask the Western countries and the countries where a sizable Sri Lankan diaspora, particularly of the Tamil origin, resides, don't come out with a narrative, one-sided narratives on the basis of vote bank politics. That's not fair. That's not helping Sri Lanka. We are trying to reconcile. I think 3 areas we have to improve in the North and East also. That means we have to have meaningful power devolution. We have to have an accountability mechanism like TRC also. We also have to find a way to improve the living standard of our fellow Sri Lankans in North and East.
Russia war, especially we see Sri Lankan military servicemen, war heroes being enlisted in the war there.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation. We also, that all happened in the slide, not officially applied for it, not officially applied for employment visa, not officially registered with SLBFE until we went there and until some reports came in, no one knew. We are sending a career diplomat, senior career diplomat, Mr. Amsa, former Sri Lanka's ambassador who was in Saudi Arabia, just returned to go there because we need a senior hand to tackle this situation. We are also looking at and looking forward for the upcoming visit of our State Minister and the Defence Secretary. He will be accompanied by 2 members of the Parliament who are supposed to leave Sri Lanka to be there in Russia from 5th to the 7th. This is a scam.
Could this be a record by a strong hand?
Yes, this is so. This is so. That is why we have investigations are revealed so. We have taken about 5-6 people for custody. Investigation are ongoing.
Well, 37 Sri Lankans have been wounded while 16 remain missing out of more than 450 Sri Lankan nationals who had joined the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war, says State Minister of Foreign Affairs Taraka Balasurya. A Sri Lankan delegation will travel to Moscow from the 5th to the 7th of June on a diplomatic mission intended to ascertain the welfare of the Sri Lankans remaining in Russia. In the meantime, the ambassador of Russia to Sri Lanka, Levan Jagaryan, said Sri Lankan delegation in Russia will meet with high-ranking officials of the Russian military today to discuss the ground situation.
As for the exact number of people who have gone to Russia, so far we have received 455 complaints. We feel that these numbers could be much higher than this. We want to work very closely with the Russian embassy and come to an early settlement on this matter. We have requested for appointments from the Russian Foreign Ministry and the Ministry of Defense, and we hope that the appointments will come by the 5th. We have indicated that we will be wanting to travel to Russia between 5th and the 7th. At the moment, we have repatriated 26 people. We have reports that there are 16 people missing. This figure could be much higher. So Mr. Amsa, who's here with us, who has just returned as the ambassador from Saudi, will be going to Russia as the charge d'affaires until this matter is settled.
Today in Moscow, there will be a meeting in the Defense Ministry with the head of your diplomatic mission and with your defense attaché, with high-ranking Russian military officials. I do believe that would be the first step, and we will continue these efforts to settle down the situation. Just a few words, about these people who came to the Russian embassy to obtain this visa. These people didn't tell us that they have signed contracts.
We were talking about some of these people having some kind of contracts. On social media, we have seen that these people claim that these are agreements with the Russian Ministry of Defense. So would you have any information from the Russian defense authorities on any Sri Lankans who may have signed up
That's the issue to be discussed today at the Defense Ministry. Let's wait.
There are reports of people from Sri Lanka joining the Russian army and even opening tax files with the Russian government. Even this, it seems unlike that Russian government is unaware of the situation. Is the Russian government officially recruiting people from countries like Sri Lanka and India to join the war, or is this happening illegally without their knowledge?
Just now, I am not ready to answer this in details. And one reference to you. Why you are talking only about Russia? Why don't you talk about Ukraine? Why do you keep silence about Ukraine? Please don't follow double standards.
And the Marine Environment Protection Authority has detained a vessel responsible for an oil spill while anchored at the Colombo port. A spokesperson of MEPA stated that legal action has been initiated against the vessel owning company and the respective insurance company over the oil spill. MEPA is seeking compensation for the accident as provided under the Marine Environment Protection Authority Act. It is learned that the vessel belonging to an Indian company had recently docked at the port of Colombo for maintenance. Following an investigation by MEPA, a leakage of hydraulic acid from the ship has been uncovered. Now, MEPA confirms that the company owner had committed to provide compensation for the oil spill. The Colombo Magistrate Court has imposed a travel ban on the captain of the vessel, preventing him from leaving the country, acting on a petition filed by the Colombo Port Police. An island-wide strike action was launched by the Teacher Principal Trade Union Alliance today, and activists vow to continue for a second day tomorrow. Against this backdrop, the Ministry of Education issued a statement informing that all government schools will function both today and tomorrow as usual. However, schools in several suburban areas outside Colombo remained closed today.
The Teacher Principal Trade Union yesterday announced a decision to report in sick today to launch a nationwide strike action demanding immediate solutions to teacher principal salary discrepancies. However, several trade unions including the Ceylon Teachers Union, Ceylon Teacher Service Union and All Ceylon Union of Teachers decided not to join today's strike action. Trade unions involved in the strike action convened a news briefing this afternoon.
අමාත්‍යංශයේ තවත් හොර නින්දේ පසුවන නිසා හෙට දවස තුලදීත් මේ ක්‍රියාමාර්ගය අකණ්ඩව ඉදිරියට ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න
අපි දන්නවා අපේ ගුරුසා විද්‍යාපතිගේ වැටුප් විෂමතාවයෙන් 3න් 1යි අපිට ලැබුණේ. දින 120කට අපි කරපු දීර්ඝ අරගලයක් තුල තමයි අපි එක දිනාගත්තේ. අසනීප නිවාඩු වාර්තා කිරීමක් සඳහා යම්කිසි කණ්ඩායමක් කතා කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
4 major national sports federations have been suspended via a gazette published yesterday. Sports Minister Harin Fernando issued a gazette notification suspending the registrations of the Sri Lanka Cycling Federation, Sri Lanka Rugby Federation, Sri Lanka Automobile Federation and the Sri Lanka Netball Federation with effect from yesterday. With the suspension of the 4 federations, Director General of the Department of Sports Development, Professor Rear Admiral Shamal Fernando, has been appointed as the competent authority to oversee administrative activities of the sports bodies. The competent authority is also vested with the responsibility to call and conduct relevant elections. The Sports Minister said in the interim government will not appoint any interim committee for any of the federations. As heavy rains and strong winds lash Sri Lanka, the Met Department issued a red alert for strong gusty winds and rough seas, urging fishing communities not to venture into sea. Given the prevailing inclement weather patterns, the Irrigation Department cautioned the public about rising water capacities of several rivers, including Mahaveli, Kalu, Ging and Nilwala. This also prompted authorities to open sluice gates of some reservoirs. Nearby residents are also warned of possible flooding. The rising water levels of some rivers led to several areas in Ratnapura being submerged. Taking the current weather pattern into account, the National Building Research Organisation issued landslide warnings to 6 districts. In business news, Sri Lanka will sign an agreement with India's Adani Group next week for projects amounting to $800 million. State Minister of Investment Promotion Dilum Amunugama said the investment will be allocated to the proposed wind power projects that received approval in year 2023 to be built in Mannar and Punareen in the country's northern province. The proposed wind projects are expected to generate an additional 484 megawatts to the national grid.
The target set by Finance Ministry for the BOI is $1 billion for the year. There are about 30 projects here. We have signed projects that brought in around $320 million today. Some of those projects have already begun, while others are ready to export their products in the coming months. We will be signing agreements with India's Adani next week, which brings us another $800 million. With that, we are happy to announce that we have achieved the target for this year within the first half. We will not stop there. We are also in discussions with several other investors, especially investment zones in Trincomalee, Mankulam, Parantan and KKS are to be established. We are at the land acquisition stage for that. We are already in discussion with a private investor for the KK's investment zone and another private investor for several urban development projects.
Another Colombo Stock Exchange. The bourse experienced mixed sentiment amid ongoing certainties but closed in green today. Despite yesterday's panic selling after Combank's rights issue announcement, Commercial Bank a positive contribution to the index, while the banking sector led by DB, Sampath and DFCC largely buoyed the index alongside conglomerates such as Richard Pearce and diversified and dividend declared companies. The SPI closed at 12,170, gaining 68 points. Turnover saw a notable rebound, surging 11.01% week-on-week to reach 1.3 billion. However, 38.9% lower than the monthly average, standing at 2.1 billion rupees. Off-board transactions contributed 25.7% to total turnover. Foreigners closed as net sellers of 105 million rupees. And Sri Lanka's rupee closed broadly flat at 301.85 to 301.90 against the US dollar. Here's a look at how the rupee traded today. And that's it from us here tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.